First, let's fire off a disclaimer. If the name RPG Maker didn't make it clear, this is not a game per se. This is simply an application with what you can make your own games. So, with that out of the way, let's get this shit rolling. I've always had a fascination with game engines, as well as some sort of severe case of lettering, such as ADHD. This means that there's a fairly big chance that I will zone in on stuff, and especially when it's basic things like configuring the operating system, building stuff with Raspberry Pi devices, or getting a server up and running. One of these zones have always been game development, and I did it professionally for a few years as a designer of both graphics and sound. When I went on in other fields, I kinda missed working on games, and as time went on, I got both keys for Unity, Game Maker, and even Game Salad. I did 2 games for iOS devices, but they were so crap that I won't talk about them here and will leave that for another time. The thing though is I love tinkering about in these engines and have had loads of ideas and mechanics in these engines that never really led to anything. These days I'm kinda busy to have the time to sit down and with a relaxed mind get into this again. RPG Maker MV for the Nintendo Switch. By now I'm sure that you have a fairly good idea of Gubbspel's platform of choice. If not, it's the Switch. When I received a review code from NIS America, me being excited is kind of an understatement. Since I've heard a lot about the PC version of RPG Maker MV and almost peed my pants of excitement when the app was downloaded and ready to go. Since I'm somewhat of a genius and whiz when it comes to navigating around all these different engines, finding my way around MV was a breeze. Everything is as expected, and if you know your basic if-then-else statements, then you're good to go. On the other hand, if you're not familiar with if-then-else statements, you might find it a bit hard to get your head around at first, but eventually it will all make sense. If I would try to explain if-then-else statements, I would say that one scenario would be like with the bouncer at a club. You tell the bouncer to check all IDs. If the ID is legit, then send the visitor in, else tell them to leave. This is somewhat of the basic of all programming, and with a basic knowledge of how this works, you will get the knack of it pretty quick. Anyway, back to this little review. The main part of MV is the editor, and it's mostly made up by the map editor. This is where you draw your game with what's called tiles. That's basically like a tile you would put on the floor in your bathroom. Pick a tile from the palette to the left and simply place it on the map. In the palette, you can select multiple tiles at once, making the placement of tiles a pretty easy task. In the palette, you have 4 different tabs, where the first 3 are normal tiles, where 1 is the lowest, 2 is mid, and 3 is the topmost layer. The 4th tab is for event-specific things, and I won't go through that right now. This system is fine, but if you're not paying attention, you might end up with a vending machine, and on the side of it is a bus the size of a toaster. This is obviously to make it more dynamic. Use small buildings on the large map and large structures on the sub-maps. The only thing is that these are sometimes somewhat mixed in the palette. Above the map window you get a few tools. Those are freehand drawing, square and circle tools, zoom and much more. You also have icons for event manager, settings and character editor. I love the event manager, the settings manager and the character editor because this is where you can zone in like a lot. The event manager is basically the what will happen when I do something screen. This is where you more or less program your game. If you want to make a chest that will give you potion, create an NPC that will insult your awesome hairdo, or even do a door that will take you from the main map to smaller locations, the event editor is where you make everything happen. It's rather simple if you would like to create something like a visual novel or a linear story, but the more advanced stuff, such as conditional switches, is where you make stuff happen. With these you can make switches or flags that tells the engine that you got that key from Slobodan the NPC at the market of Gorgonzola, and now you can open that locked chest. It might look intimidating at first, but after a while you will get around it and learn all the different tools at your disposal. The settings manager is where you change all the base settings of the game, how the actual game will act rather than look. You can change a lot about the overall look and feel of the game here, such as title screen, credits and more. You also work with your party here, choose their names, their stats, their looks, etc. I would say that the settings editor is the base settings of the game. Now you can take a guess at what you would do in the character editor. Yeah, you're correct. This is where you export your game and optimize it so that it runs smoothly. No. Browse through all the pre-made assets here or create your own. One fun option is to randomize characters, and sometimes you end up with bizarre looking creations. Save it and make it a party member in the settings editor. With the editor you can change everything from eyes, ears, hair, glasses, all sorts of fun stuff. You have the choice of making male, female or kid characters. One of the absolute biggest differences from the computer version of MV is that on the computer you can add custom assets to the game. That and plugins. I don't think I need to tell you that that's not possible in the Switch version. However, future DLC will let you download custom packages that Nintendo might think is alright. So those hentai games that people were looking forward to, I don't think they're gonna happen. No stress though, you have literally a horse load of assets included. Apart from the kinda ugly and boring title screen, there's like a million characters in different styles and forms, tile sets of many different styles and about 400,000 music tracks included. If you would make a game with all of these, it would probably be one of the biggest RPGs ever created. Add to that 999 maze maps the size of 256 by 256 tiles, and you've got a world record. A maze of 256 by 256 tiles would alone take some time to complete. And as you can see here, you got some work to do if you wanna play maps like this. The art style of the included assets is great, and if you've got problems to find cool assets here, you probably got more problems than that. So, great editors, great engine and great assets, but is everything peaches and all good? Not really. I have some complaints that I can live with, although they're kinda annoying. This engine wasn't really made for the small screens of the Switch. It also wasn't created for the controllers on the Switch. It's somewhat of a port and it works, but it's a tedious process from time to time to create maps, input, texts, etc. First, I tried to use MV on the Switch Lite. After going blind trying to figure out what was what in the tile palette, I used it on the larger Switch. Same there, I went a bit more blind, but in docked mode I got some of my sight back. It wasn't until I hooked up a keyboard that my arthritis I got from entering text with the controllers got better. Now I could use the Pro controller to navigate, and when I wanted to enter some text I could quickly put the controller down, pick up the keyboard, enter the text, put down the keyboard, pick up the controller, click the plus a few times, go back, delete the yeah, you see where I'm getting at. This game is not optimized to use with a game controller, and since there isn't any mouse support and the touch interface sucks so bad in this engine, you kinda lose your flow when creating stuff. The keyboard support is a step in the right direction, and I'm happy that I don't have to type in text with the on-screen keyboard using the stick. One example of bad flow is the tabbing from section to section and editing them. You tab from section to section, you press the A button to change in a section, and when you wanna go to the next section or change something, you cancel everything and it's a disaster. Many times you just screw up because this system is bad. I wish so bad that the developers would come up with a fix for this, because the controls is what drags down an otherwise great engine. I truly enjoy working with this, and the fact that you can whip up a quick adventure over the weekend is so cool, and because of this I'm willing to put the bad controls aside and focus on the good stuff. If you're like me, willing to live with kinda bad controls and the need for using it in docked mode to not go blind, I would say definitely get this. It's a lot of fun. If you're not sure about the engine and if you should start your own epic development company, just download RPG Maker MV Player and try out a few of the games that other creators have made. It's a free application that will let you try out the games created in MV. If you, as an amateur developer, put your mind to it, you can do some really cool shit in this engine. This was my thoughts of RPG Maker MV. The bashing of the controls might sound that I don't like this and I don't recommend it. That's not correct. The controls are bad, but eventually you will get over it, and I believe you will get to grips with the controls. That's why I'm gonna recommend RPG Maker MV. The NIS America version will be available both as a download on the eShops and as a physical for the Switch and the PS4. It releases on September the 8th in North America, September the 11th in Europe, and September the 18th in Australia and New Zealand. Until next time, stay safe, stay gold, and keep your head down.